Joining us right now is Lizette Cooper. She is Athena Capital Advisors CEO and Chief Investment Officer. Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us, Lizette.
Very nice to be here with you, Maria.
You've got $6 billion in assets under management. You've got to put it to work somehow in this market. How are you dealing with this volatility?
Well, there is a lot of volatility right now, but we don't think that it's really a downward trend. We're looking to rebalance the portfolio around the world, and especially we're moving more money from passive management into active management.
Okay, active management means stocks picking, selective picking. What are you doing then?
Yeah, for example, a lot of people are really worried about China with the slowdown in China, but some sectors in China are still growing really quickly, consumer and internet, things like that. So we are going to things like active management, people like that invest in the whole region but are very selective about what they invest in.
So in other words, a hedge fund manager or somebody who can actively manage the risk of a 28% crash in the Hang Seng, 24% in the DAX. How many people do you think own just passive exposure to, as Maria and I would call, rainbows and puppy dogs globally?
I think it's really quite large, and I think the number of people who own ETFs has expanded tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, ETFs is an interesting one. You have most people don't realize that the RIA community in assets under management is as big as the hedge fund community, over $2 trillion. Do you think that that's exclusively what a lot of people do, is just hire an ETF these days?
I think these days there's one asset manager in Boston that's expanded from 0 to 2 billion basically overnight in that field, and I think it's a really risky thing to do, especially in volatile markets, that you want people who can really manage your money, find the companies. I mean, look at VW. I mean, you don't you really need, or Glencore, you don't really want to be in something.
You need somebody at the wheel. Even the government of Qatar owned both of those. By the way, they lost $12 billion, I think, in a couple of weeks. That's headline news today.
They owned what? They owned Biotex and they owned
Glencore and they owned Volkswagen, amongst others. There's a story this morning in the FT. They lost $12 billion.
Wow, and the Qatari sovereign wealth fund had been very successful. Over the years.
Well, anybody who bought a passive fund, made money. They actually outperformed a lot of active managers. If you look at what you just called the variance of performance, Maria, versus an active manager in the index, the index had been outperforming. Do you think that you're just saying that active is new, that's going to start to outperform?
Yeah, right now, for example, you mentioned the index. I mean, so far, year to date, you mentioned hedge funds. Hedge funds have outperformed the S&P 500 year to date. That hasn't happened over the last several years.
Right.
So that's an indicator for you.
All right, so you think just because it's happened this year so far, it's going to continue happening?
I think especially because we're in this period of time of volatility, there's a lot of geopolitical uncertainty, and the market's getting whipsawed, both with the energy price decline, what dislocations are happening around the world as due to that.
Exactly where I was going. Energy. What do we do? I mean, it's an unbelievable time for the energy market. Such a historic moment when you look at the price of oil, gasoline prices. I mean, I mean, people don't know what to do. What the direction is. Where are we going next? How do you play it?
Well, first of all, you can drive more, right? The price is down at the pump. But
that's if you're doing all right. You can actually go fill up your tank. I mean, there's a lot of questions about the health of the U.S. consumer at the same time.
Well, actually, I think the U.S. is doing pretty well. I think we're leading the world as opposed to following the world right now as growth in emerging markets has slowed down. If you look at wage inflation in the United States, it's about 2%. That's 2% real growth because inflation in the United States is 0. So the consumer is doing a little better. And I think they got a little more money in their pocket being able to drive. And consumers around the world, like let's say India, places like that are oil importers, this is good for them too.
But at the same time, like today, India cuts interest rates by not 25 beeps, 50 beeps. And I had to write this down because you rarely see this written by a central bank or a central planner, as I like to call them. They are, quote unquote, we are caught in a vortex of global demand slowing. A vortex. What is that? I mean, can people driving for cheaper offset the vortex?
That's a really great word, a vortex. You have this sense of like the economy spiraling down the drain or something. But I think that's a great visual, but it's a little extreme. And I think that we just revised growth upward, GDP upward in the United States. In the United States, we're looking on the Q2 number, and Janet Yellen's clearly telegraphed that she's planning to raise interest rates, by the end of the year.
The problem with that is that October we get the Q3 number. October 31st, we're going to get the Q3 number, and we have it getting cut in half twice. So, is the market pricing that in effectively that the U.S. is not going to decouple from the rest of the world? It is indeed slowing too.
Well, that could be the case. That's certainly a possible scenario. But we're we have a global economy. The rest of the world's slowing. We can't completely decouple. On the other hand, I think the data looks pretty good. Housing's strong. I don't think this is the time to panic.
Are you raising cash right now?
We are not raising cash right now. We're rotating. We're doing things like tax loss harvesting in the United States, and we're looking to selectively increase exposure, for example, in Europe, where earnings are actually improving. I know there's a lot of volatility right now, but I don't see a doomsday.
All right, Lizette, great to have you on the show today. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We're looking